You're on mute, Lindsay.
Odd. Great. Hi everybody. This is the last panel of Sunday, and it's the last day of the festival, the very last event. So this is the UK Crime 2 panel. So I've got Pamela St Abbs, I've got Mark Newman, I've got Emma Salisbury, and I've got Dougie Brimson, and I've got Caz Maston again chairing the event. So I'll pass yours on.
So I normally start off with letting everybody introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their books. So if we start at the top and go round, so we start with Pamela.
Hello, I'm Pamela St Abbs. I write mostly the crime fiction stories featuring Inspector Campbell, and he's a Scottish man from Edinburgh who is actually working in East Anglia. And so the stories are developed from that. That's me.
Hi, I'm Mark Newman. I write crime fiction and thrillers. I'm probably best known at the moment for the Crime Syndicate, which is following the exploits of a Glasgow gang right from the early 70s, bringing it up to modern day. And that follows a wannabe gangster in the early days called Malky Thompson, who actually has to get out of Glasgow, and he goes south of the border, and he ends up in the Midlands, in and around where, I don't actually say where it is, but it's based around where I grew up as a kid, sort of in and around the Coventry and Birmingham area. So it's sort of Scottish gangsters are exported over the border down into England, and it follows their exploits as they set up their own firm.
My name's Dougie Brimson. I started writing non-fiction about football and the culture of football, and this developed into doing comedy stuff, and eventually through a chance meeting, well, not a chance meeting, with Her Highness Linda LaPlante, I ended up writing a thriller, which has led into a trilogy of thrillers, and I'm currently working on a fourth. That's it. And they're all written from a particular criminal's perspective, and it's about his development from a football hooligan into a member of the political class.
Intriguing. Hi everyone, my name's Emma Salisbury. I'm the creator of two crime fiction series, one set in Edinburgh, which is a gangland series featuring Davy Johnson, who's just out of jail. And the series that I'm better known for is the Manchester Police procedural series that I created featuring Kevin Coupland, who's a detective sergeant. It's based in a fictional station called Salford Precinct Station in Greater Manchester. I have 7 books, or rather 6 books in the Manchester series, 2 in the Edinburgh series. I've released book 6 of the Manchester series a couple of months ago, and book 7 is in production.
Excellent. So my first question for all of you is, where do you get your inspiration from for your crimes and things that you write about? Shall we start at the top again with Pamela?
Yes, my inspiration is based on East Anglia, where I lived for many years, and I worked there as well. So you kind of get a very intimate knowledge of the landscape, of the atmosphere, and of the people. And so this feeds the Campbell series, and that is very inspirational, and also my job as well. I come across lots of things that happen between myself and the members of the public, and this has been a very good outlet for all those things that have happened to me and to others that I know. So yes, it's quite interesting. I have a role that is, I'm not in the police, but I do learn a lot of the procedures, and I do learn a lot of the legislative network, how it all fits together. So you know, this informs what I write as well.
Fab, Mum?
Okay. Well, a long time ago, straight out of university, I ended up being a police photographer. So that exposed me to crime scenes, forensics, procedures. It taught me how all the different departments gel together, work together. It showed me some of the conflicts that there were between sort of the civilian post of the police photography unit and that of the actual police officers. So it gave me a really, really good insight firsthand. I went from sort of, driving a truck one day straight after graduation to getting this job, which was like a dream job as a police photographer, to go into my first murder within sort of 3 or 4 days. And it went from there. Within 6 months, I'd seen, a lifetime of stuff, really, because I was based with the West Midlands. And outside the Met at the time, the West Midlands, particularly where I was based, was going through a particularly sort of nasty kind of crime scene in and around Birmingham. A lot of drugs, a lot of gangs, a lot of murders going on that didn't necessarily make it to Midlands Today and certainly the national news, but was certainly going on a daily basis. Beyond that, I ended up going into teaching, and I cut my teeth in teaching young juvenile offenders. So I got another insight, if you like. So I'd come from the photography background, and I ended up teaching at a YOI, as it was in those days. And I got to meet kids who'd been in gangs since the age of 14, who quite openly said to me, "What do I want to go to school for? What do I want to get a job for? When I can earn, £1,500, £2,000 a week by," as they would say, shotting drugs. It made no sense to them. Their kind of value system, their early kind of experience of growing up, it was the norm. And I tried to put both of those kind of job experiences into the characters I write and the people I've met. So I am, to a certain extent, mixing fact and fiction. Obviously, I changed names and locations, but a lot of my characters are based on real cases that I might have been to as a police photographer. And also some of the people I met when I was working in the prison system as well. So I draw on all that, and I use all of that in my books.
Should we go with Dougie next in order, as we were before?
Yeah. My inspiration, it comes from 2 places, really. One is my readers. I mean, In the Know, which is my latest, is my 16th book. And the thrillers I've done previously, the readers, the central character is a guy called Billy Evans, who's a nasty piece of work, really. But my readers seem to love him, and they keep pushing, what's he done next? What's happened next? Blah, blah, blah. And what started out as 1 book is now a trilogy. They're pushing me for a 4th book, which I don't know how that's going to work. Although I have got an idea for another 2. But the ideas for the stories come from endings. All I have is fixation with endings in books. So I always write my endings first. And if something arrives which kind of triggers a storyline, then I'll write that ending, and the rest of the book will just be shaped around that. And I always have a big twist in the last few pages of my books, because that's the way I like to construct them, and that's the way my readers like them. So while they're still buying them, I'll keep writing them. I think it's all about money, really, at the end of the day, and we all like to eat. I earn my living as a writer, so I've got to keep selling them, and if I keep, people keep buying them, I'll keep writing them.
Emma?
Okay, I love writing crime fiction because I think it gives us a chance to explore what goes on in the world around us. It gives us a chance to make sense of what happens. I am afflicted with an overactive imagination, and I eavesdrop at every opportunity. The jobs that I've had, I think, as Mark has said, I've had jobs that have really helped inform me in terms of the level of criminality and things that can happen. I used to work with ex-offenders, trying to get them back into housing and into jobs, and had to support them with so many different issues that they faced. And they're real people with facing a lot of challenges, and you do get to be privy to things that once you've dealt with it and come away afterwards, I've reflected and thought, actually, that could work in a story. And so some of the ideas have come from that, around maybe something that's going on in the world that I need to make sense of. I think with my police procedural series, Kevin Coupland, I think the reason why readers really have taken to him is because he doesn't have superpowers. He can't win every battle that he goes up against, but he cares, and he can think, and he can ponder about situations, and then he goes in a way that maybe we as individuals don't have the benefit of doing. He can get angry, he will fight to the last bit of breath in him to try and help somebody or to solve something in a way that we could only hope to. So I think that's why people like him. Certainly, I think, as Dougie said, the reader feedback is essential, and they seem to like the fact that he has a private life that is important to him. He's got a good family life that is centred around everything. We've learnt that he has a troubled background, and that's informed his actions going forward. So although my books are plot driven and there is lots of different crimes that happened through them, there is an underlying exploration, I think, of what's going on in the world as well at the same time. Hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It's a great answer. I've read a book by, I think, most of you on the panel, and location seems really important in your novels. Can you explain to us, like, the locations that you use and like how you think they add to the novels? And Pamela, I'd really want to start with you, because when I read of yours, it was really atmospheric.
Yes, I think East Anglia particularly offers so many different environments, and each one I think I've explored in each book. There's the area sort of that abuts the fens, and that the slightly higher ground there, and you get a kind of crossover between sort of a sort of ordinary countryside, and yet you view the fens on the other side. And another one was basically set around the area between that area and the sort of forest and the sort of high chalky grounds of Norfolk. And another, the one that I wrote a couple of books back, Twisting Tide, that was very much about the Wash and how it behaves, and the people that are on it and work on it, and the surrounding areas, and some of one of the main places in that is a place that's been adopted as a monastery in a kind of modern sense, in that the monks there's just a couple of them there, and they're just living a lifestyle more than anything else, and their interaction and how they behave with people seems to match the atmosphere of the Wash, and where it meets again the land, because there's this enormous, as you know, the Wash with a capital W is there, and it's just such a dangerous place to be. And I had the opportunity on one occasion to walk out with people that collect for sampling the shellfish, and it was just another world. It was just like, being somewhere so different, and that really did inform that book. That's really how it is. The last book, the one that's the picture on the wall behind you, that is set really in North Norfolk, where you have the amazing sandy beaches, and really the holiday area where everybody goes to have a good time. And again, it's quite different to the other parts of Norfolk. So all these areas really did feed. One of my readers did say that she quite enjoyed trying to work out where all the places were. because I fictionalize them.
Mark?
Well, my books don't actually state where the location is, but as I said previously, I tend to draw heavily on my experience of growing up in and around the Coventry area and sort of the South Birmingham area. So I tend to think visually. Everything I write, I've got pictures in my mind. So when I'm talking about Malky Thompson going into a certain club and taking his coat off and putting it on the pool table, then grabbing a snooker cue, I have that particular pool hall in my head where I might have gone when I was, cutting school at 15 and going to play pool instead of going to school for the morning. And that features heavily. And I'm one of these people who thinks visually first. I tend to get my book covers mocked up first and then build a story from that, or have a character kind of talking to me in my head, but it might be a random person that's passed me in the street, and I think, oh, that guy there will make a decent henchman or something like that. So yeah, so far the Crime Syndicate, apart from me mentioning Glasgow as Glasgow and having to do a bit of research online about particular roads in and around Glasgow and what happened in the 70s with the rebuild, really. The rest of it, I've kind of kept it loose deliberately because I didn't want to pinpoint certain police stations. I didn't want to pinpoint certain pubs, but they are definitely there. And for anybody who is from the kind of Midlands, they will recognise some of those kind of areas just through the kind of language I use. And I try to describe it in a very visual way so that people can imagine themselves there. But the new stuff I'm going on to write, I will be particularly placing certain locations in the book deliberately. So I'm developing a new series at the moment about a close protection officer, and that very deliberately starts in Libya and then comes back to the UK. But it will be going to America at some point. So I've got a whole series mapped out for that. Another book that I'm relaunching is again, it's not sort of the Coventry and Birmingham area specifically, but people reading it will be able to pick that up.
Dougie?
When I first started developing the idea for The Crew, which was the first book in this trilogy, I needed two things. The central character has a history as a very violent football thug, so I needed him to be in and around a football club which has a particular history of violence. So that narrowed my field down. My wife is an Essex girl, so I know Essex quite well. That fitted in. The typical stereotypical Essex guy fitted in with every characterization I needed for my central character. So it was pretty much cut and dry that he was going to be a West Ham supporter who lived in and around Romford, where my auntie lived and where I knew particularly well. And it's worked out really well. It just works for where he lives. I don't think Billy, my character, could live anywhere else other than in Essex. So that's suited him, that's suited me. The next book I'm doing is my first military thriller. I did 18 years in the RAF. So it's about time I did something set in the military, set in the RAF. So that, because of what happens in that story, that will be based in and around Oxford. And that's shaping up very well. It's an area I also know quite well. Yeah. So the south of England is where all my stuff will be set, because that's where I know.
It's a great question, actually, Caz, because it's a little known fact that when I first started writing, I set the location as the Peak District, which is where I lived for several years. And it was only as a result of securing a contract with my first agent that it changed, because she sort of turned around after reading the manuscript and saying, this is great, but you'll have to change the location, of course. Oh, why? And it turned out that she also represented Stephen Booth, and anybody that has read Stephen's wonderful stories that are set in the Peak District, I could understand why she wouldn't want two authors in the same stable writing with the same location. So she sent me away and said, you're going to have to pick somewhere else. And it makes perfect sense to pick somewhere that you know well. So I was born and grew up in Salford. It made perfect sense to base it there. And it was just like a light bulb coming on, really, when I realised that's what I should do. It's not as easy as people think. People think, oh, well, you just change your location. But you're talking about two completely different backdrop scenes. One's rural, one's very urban. So I had to completely rewrite the novel. In fact, I threw that novel away and started a completely different series, a completely different novel, and introduced Kevin Coupland. And it just gelled completely. He is gritty and hard and honest as the day is long, very much like the city. I'm a Mancunian born and bred, so I was able to really draw on everything that I know about the people around and in the city and their strengths and weaknesses. And it's the same with the locations. So although at times there can be some dark places, there's a lot of northern humour as well that brings it out and lifts it, which appeals to readers. But yes, not many people know that I started off with in the Peak District, and I'm very, very grateful that that was ditched at the first hurdle.
It's a nice thing to have drawn out of you on here then. So would any of you, or do any of you, write in different genres outside of crime? We'll go back to Pamela. We'll just keep going in order around from Pamela.
All right.
Yes, I do actually. I do write and draw children's stories, and I also do a little bit of historical fiction, which is again crime, but of a historical nature, medieval type stuff. But that is what I've got to say about doing medieval history is it is extremely hard work to do all the work that needs necessary behind the scenes to build something that you feel is functionally realistic enough for people to be absorbed by it. And also I also like that historical aspect for the inspiration it gives to the storyline itself. I do like a historical story that fits into history in some way. So I write under a different name for that, but at the moment I only have one novel out under the name of Mary Bale, and that's the name I use for the historical fiction. And I use the name Pammy Bale for any of my drawings that come along. The reason that I have got these sort of different areas I write is really because of my interests. You know, when I started to write, it was really a spillover from drawing and painting. I found that I started to write on my pictures and I thought I have to deal with this in some way. So I started writing on paper the words and keeping the pictures as pictures rather than becoming, say, a comic writer or something like that. So yes, that's what me in that respect.
Go on, Mark.
Yeah, I think I've already answered this one. So Crime Syndicate is my main series, but I do also write standalone thrillers. There's currently one up at the moment called Paid in Full. I should have really done a bit more research on that before I launched it in 2017, because as it went onto Amazon, I found there was probably 12 other titles called Paid in Full, all sort of within the crime and thriller genre. I am in the process of relaunching that, and it's actually going to be called Defrayed. I've rewritten elements of it. It's going to have a new cover, and I've also got 3-4 other standalone thrillers. They tend to be a bit more, I don't know, the closest thing I could probably link them to is more in the style of Simon Koenig, sort of fast-paced, race against time, what I would probably call suburban thrillers. It affects the ordinary person in the street rather than the criminal or a police officer or a private investigator. I don't have any plans to kind of go outside of crime or thrillers. I'm very definitely kind of branding myself within those kind of two broad genres, and we'll see how it goes. I've been published now since 2016, I think. I'm an indie publisher, so I fit all this in around my day job. So it's a kind of slow kind of process because I have to do all the marketing and everything else. But yeah, crime and thrillers is pretty much where I'm at.
Well, as I said, I started off writing non-fiction. I've done 9 non-fiction books now. And aside from thrillers, I've also done 3 comedy books. My dad was a comic, so I get that kind of side of stuff from him. And I enjoy that. I actually enjoy writing comedy more than thrillers. So I'll almost certainly be doing more of that at some point in the future. And of course, I write in movies, which is a different world, not so much a different genre. But I'm fortunate in the fact I can write what interests me. If an idea comes to me that I think has got legs, has got potential, then I'll run with it. And if I have to self-publish it myself, I'll self-publish it myself. It doesn't mean much to me. Mark's point about branding is really important. One of the problems I've had over the years is the fact that my name is associated with a particular type of non-fiction book. And that that provides a bit of an obstacle. I'm known as you're the hooligan writer. And when you write something which is not even anything to do with football, which is a comedy book about lads, lad lit, if you like, it's a battle. It's a battle to get any coverage. It's a battle to get into bookstores. It's a battle to stop your book being stuck on the sports shelves, which is where they all seem to end up, which is really, really irritating. I write what I like. I like Mark. I do most of my promotion myself because I enjoy doing it. And I've got I'm fortunate in, I've sold something like 1 million books now worldwide. So I'm fortunate in the fact that I've got quite a loyal readership who kind of like whatever I put out. So as I said before, while I keep buying them, I'll keep writing them irrespective of what it is.
Well, Caz, I'm loving the questions because you're really challenging me at the moment. Another unknown fact, I think, or little known fact, is that the first novel that I penned was actually a rom-com. I actually saw myself as being a type of Marion Keyes type authoress, and I just thought this is something that I'll be great at, and it was rubbish. I could not create any feeling of romance between the characters. I wanted one to kill the other. There was no romance. There was nothing there, and I couldn't capture it. I think my brain is very much operates on a dark level. I like mysteries to solve, problems to work out, and I just decided this isn't enjoyable. But that was the main thing. The process wasn't enjoyable, and I just chucked it away and started writing a simple mystery initially. I think you would call them cozy mysteries, probably. And I thought, okay, still not feeling it. I need to put some more detail, some emotion, some shocking factors. I think that's the thing. My books do have a shock factor. In Fragile Chord, which is the first in the Manchester series, that's based on filicide. A mother kills a child right at the outset, and the reader has to work out why that might have happened. So in that, you know who did it, but you don't know why. So those are the types of novels and stories that grip me, the kind of things that I like to read. So I've written all sorts of topics. One Bad Turn does touch on football hooliganism, Dougie, and that was a lot of fun to research, I must admit. And also human trafficking, arson, bullying, sexual exploitation is the topic of my latest work in progress. So there's a lot of dark topics. I seem to err towards the dark side, so it probably says a lot more about me than perhaps it should. But there's the truth of it, Caz.
Well, inspired by you, I'm going to go back around with another question. Is there anything you wouldn't write about or include in your books?
Well, that is a tricky one. I'm finding my latest book quite difficult to write because there are so many things that of a difficult nature that I need to put in it. And I find that quite difficult, I have to confess. So yes, though there are things I want to put in my book, sometimes it's a very great struggle for me to fit them in a way that I like. And I think that's the biggest problem with difficult subjects. My books tend to be more, how can I say, I like a complex mystery. I'm one of these people, when I read a mystery, I want it to be complex. I want it to have little corners. I want it to have layers and all those sorts of things. And somehow, when you're dealing with a very tough problem, and you want to slide it in a way that people can accept it, but without losing the importance of that problem. And I think these things are so difficult sometimes to fit into a book, and you want to do it, but you just find it difficult to maneuver the words into such a way that it'll, in a way, fit into your own personal genre that you've created for yourself, your own, I think you call it brand these days, but that kind of thing, you know, where people pick up at one of your books and expect a certain sort of story. And yet, if you try and pull in things that are a bit more challenging, would that upset people, or should I just go for it? So yes, I think that's what the stumbling block really on this the latest book that I'm trying to write at the moment, the difficulty of dealing with difficult issues.
My books are kind of Marmite books, I think. The Crime Syndicate by some reviewers has been called gratuitous violence. So they tend to be the kind of lower stars. The people who give it 5 stars absolutely love the action, the authenticity, the pace, the setting. So I think what I'm trying to do is reach a wider audience with what I'm doing. I don't want to be known as just the guy who writes, a bit like Dougie, you know, he writes comedy as well, but you know, he might be labelled as the guy who writes the football hooligan stuff. Likewise, I don't want to be known as, oh, that's Mark Newman who writes those extremely violent things about Scottish gangsters that have ended up in the Midlands who are torturing each other to death to extract information and stuff like that. I think because of the background I've got working in the prison and being a police photographer, there's a lot of stuff I've seen that I could write about, but I choose not to write about. And I'm also mindful at the moment that, you know, my day job, I'm a full-time secondary school teacher. So hence Mark Newman is a pen name. Although my real name is Mark, so, you know, I'm not conning everybody completely, but there's stuff that as a full-time secondary school teacher, if I had my year 7s and 8s Googling me and finding some of that stuff, I'd probably find myself in the headmaster's office, giving him reasons why he shouldn't give me my P45. But yeah, the things I deliberately try to kind of stay away from are sort of violence towards children in the books and anything that might deal with child exploitation. Although, you know, parts of the Crime Syndicate do touch on people trafficking and prostitution, and there are certainly some minors involved in that, but I don't tend to go into too much detail. So I think while I'm still teaching, there are certain things that I won't go down that road. And like I say, I want to reach a wider audience. So that I don't want to be just known as the guy who writes, you know, extreme violence about gangsters, you know, killing each other and getting revenge. I want to be a little bit more commercial, if I'm honest. I want to reach a wider audience that at the moment are probably a little bit put off by some of the violence in my books, which is why I enjoy doing the standalones, because to a certain extent I have to get Malky Thompson out of my head. He is a sadistic sociopath. And if you meet me, I'm sort of, you know, a quiet, kind of, you know, mild-mannered, fully socially adjusted person, and people go, "My God, man, what's that stuff you're writing, Mark? What's really going on in your head?" and it can be a little bit kind of off-putting to some people, I think. But yeah, I think at the moment certainly it's anything to do with violence towards children. I just wouldn't go there.
Well, my books are obviously quite violent in part, but most of that, all of that violence is in context, and most of it is, to be fair, suggested. I know my subject, so I know how to write it in a way that it doesn't have to be, you know, gratuitous. It doesn't have to be about blood spraying up walls and that sort of nonsense. And that continues over. That's much the same in film stuff as well. But there's stuff I won't do. There are red lines for me, and it's the same in film or book. I won't touch anything to do with drugs at all, and I won't touch anything to do with sexual abuse, because that, to me, that's gratuitous. I don't want to be that kind of writer that writes that sort of nonsense. And I mean that in the sense of, you know what I mean. It doesn't fit me. It's not something I want to touch. It's not something I want to explore. It's not something I want any of my characters to explore. And to me, it's not authentic, that kind of thing. It's not. It doesn't fit into the world I write about. The world I write about is very honest. It's based in real life, but it's based in a particular aspect of real life that I'm quite familiar with. And the idea of anybody doing major drug selling, all that sort of stuff, doesn't interest me at all. And I certainly don't want to write about it. And I'll turn down, I will turn down at least one film every 2 weeks, which is all to do with, you know, mass shootings, drugs, trafficking and stuff like that. It just doesn't interest me at all. Doesn't interest me. I'm not that kind of writer, and I don't want to be.
I think I have found that most of the subjects that I've written about, or certainly the readers have told me afterwards, they've been written in a sensitive way. So I wouldn't say that there's a list of things I wouldn't write about. And I've been amazed at some of the subjects that I have touched on, but they're certainly not graphic. I don't see the point in as Dougie said, gratuitous descriptions. They're not there to titillate, and I certainly don't want to offend people. But I do want people to sit up, and I do at the end of Flesh and Blood, which was about people trafficking and absent. I did put some author's notes at the back of the book because I discovered some quite shocking facts that I thought the reader should know, helped influence me in terms of the things that I wanted to write about. So I do try to be as sympathetic as I possibly can. But just on the topic of what we wouldn't write about, I thought long and hard about lockdown, because I tend to write in the present, and I really had to think with my current work in progress, do I ignore it? And given that I'm writing a book in lockdown about the present, I thought I didn't want it to be depressing. None of us knew at the outset how it was going to pan out, but I decided I was going to tackle that. So it's in a realistic way, but not in a frightening way or a depressing way, with some humour in it. So I think you can write about a lot of subjects if you don't go into the detail. I think Dougie said if you can write about it in a sensitive way, you can touch around the outskirts and not be so graphic about it, then I think it can work.
That's a really good answer. Well, I want to pick up on something that Pamela said earlier now and ask you my favourite author chat question, which is, because I'm a bit of a nerd, would you write a graphic novel of any of your books? Pamela?
Yes, I'm thinking on that one. It's very tempting. It's very tempting. As I say, when I first started writing as such, I literally did do little cartoons and with words and little pictures and things like that. A little bit of a storyboard sort of arrangement. And I must admit, I still see every scene as a picture. When I'm writing, I see a picture that I'm actually writing about, which is, so it's sort of like more than words. And sometimes I have to go back and really do a lot of editing on the words, because they don't kind of look like a book. They still look like a sketch, a written sketch of what I'm wanting to see, my readers to see. So that, yes, I do think there is very much a desire to see this, and I love those films that are comic based and have this sort of like 1950s feel, perhaps, and that kind of thing. And I enjoy them for that element as much as I do for the storyline or whatever. And if someone objects to a storyline, I'll suddenly go, yes, but it's so 1950s, and that sort of thing. So yes, I think also style. When you have a book that you feel has a certain style to it, you feel you can draw that. So yes, I think it would be on the cards at some point.
Excellent. Mark?
It is actually something I've thought about. I've got an old school friend who is quite a decent artist, but is absolutely scared of Photoshop. And before I even wrote the Crime Syndicate, I did have an idea of launching it in two separate ways. One is a kind of YA graphic novel with a lot of the violence kind of watered down, but make it a bit more maybe contemporary, and not maybe set it in Scotland, and bring it down to London or another big sort of English city. And I've had an idea kicking around for about 10 years that would be a strict graphic novel based on a bit of a kind of light-hearted view, really. An air hostess who is actually an assassin, who prior to COVID, obviously, would then be flying in and out of exotic locations around the world and carrying out these assassinations on these evil men and wrongdoers, and then getting back on a flight and going off to a next one. But yeah, it's whether or not I can persuade my best friend Kieran to actually come on board and pen these characters for me, and make them come alive. I can write and I can see it in my head, and I can do my own sort of stick man and stick lady storyboarding. But beyond that, I can't draw for toffee. And that's where I need a professional illustrator to come in and kind of make that come alive for me, really.
Yeah, I'm the same. I can't draw for toffee, but I'd certainly love to do it. I mean, as a screenwriter, which is my other thing, you're constantly playing. You're writing out in your head anyway, so it's and that's the same works when you're writing a novel or a thriller or anything. I can see that movie unrolling in my head, and so the idea of writing a graphic novel, the difficult would be finding somebody to get the pictures in my head onto paper. That's a very difficult process. We actually made a film. I adapted the second book in this series for the screen. It was a movie called Top Dog. And one of the big problems I had a picture of my central character in my head. I'd had it from the first book, from day one. And when I came to adapt the book for the screen, when we cast the lead actor, he was nothing like the picture in my head. And it took me an awful long time to make that transition. When I was writing about him for the screen and converting my book, adapting the book over, it was a real struggle, but I got there in the end. And when I came to do the third book, of course, that actor was the picture in my head all the time. For me, that I'd love to do it, but that would be the difficult bit, trying to get that picture out of my head into somebody else's head. That's a really difficult process.
Emma?
Well, my detective is jumping up and down in the corner of the room, horrified at the idea. That's not something at all, I think, in a million years he'd be able to cope with. He can barely get a handle on Facebook and Twitter and all the other things that the police have got to get their heads around now in the day-to-day processes. Funnily enough, the things that he's good at are the things that I'm good at, and the things that he's not so good at are my failings too. And yeah, anything visual like graphic novels or anything like that would be a no-no, I'm safe to say.
Fair enough. So my next one is going to be another UK CBC favourite. What's your most memorable moments as an author? Start with Pamela again.
Well, I've got to say, I was just saying before we started to our producer here that I was very lucky to get a stint on at Chateau Noir about 5 years ago, and that was very exciting, I have to say, because they had a lovely system again of doing a panel, and you were with other people that were obviously big sellers, and there was little me on the same panel doing historical fiction. So yes, it was really very good, very exciting, and the weather added to it because it was I think it was November they decided to have it, and the aeroplanes were grounded at one point because the winds were so high. But as we were going into land at the airport, there were an awful lot of people looking rather green, and I thought, oh, why are they looking green? You know, this is so fun. And it turned out it was the locals that were looking green, because they said it appeared as if we were going to land in the sea. But the pilots were so talented and actually love that kind of flying in Shetland that they were just allowing the wind to blow us in. And we landed safe and sound, but with a lot of green looking people. So yes, it was very exciting all round. Had a lovely time.
Right, most memorable as an indie author is my first book, which is a sort of perma-free to get people into the system and buying into the whole Malky Thompson story. Was basically it hit the free bestseller, if you like. I know that's a bit of an oxymoron, but it stayed in the majority of the Amazon list, that like the Scottish crime, the kidnapping crime fiction, mystery, noir, all that kind of stuff, for just short of a year. It was #1. So considering it was the first thing I'd wrote and published, to have it in the free #1 slot in sort of 3 or 4 of the smaller crime niches, shall we say, in the UK store was unnerving and very satisfying at the same time. It was like, really? I was like, oh, okay, it's my first book, and it's doing that well. And I was up against some big names, and I kept checking Amazon sort of every day, and there was some really big names in there. And I was thinking, how am I #1 then? What's happening? So yeah, I'd like to get more of that, obviously, in the pay charts, but that's an ongoing sort of long-term goal, which comes back to the marketing and the branding and me trying to reach that wider audience. But yeah, that's where I am at the moment, sort of 4 years down the line.
Blimey, there's been so many. I think the big one for me was I was invited to. I sell a lot of books in Russia. And I was invited to open the Moscow Book Fair in, I think it was 2006, 2007. And as someone who went through the Cold War with the Royal Air Force, being invited to Russia was quite a big deal, and it was the most amazing trip. I really enjoyed it. But I think on a more personal level, just after I published The Crew, I got on a bus in London, in Tottenham Court Road, and there was a guy sitting on the bus reading a copy of my book, and that just gave me, I mean, The Crew was probably my 7th book by then, but that gave me such a buzz. And I actually asked him if it was any good, and he said, it's effing brilliant, mate. And the thing was, inside the front cover was my picture, and he never twigged it at all. And it was just such a buzz, and it's I've never ever forgotten that guy, and I always wonder if he actually twigged that it was me who asked him. So yeah, that's my favourite moment as an author, always will be.
Awesome. For me, a couple of things really, Caz. I think the first one was passing the 250,000 download mark with my books, which was a tremendous validation after years of trying to get them out to market. So that really does make you believe that you're a real author. And also being offered a publishing deal, which I turned down in 2017 because I didn't need it, because I was doing very well then as a self-published indie author. And so that was a great full circle to get to a point where I could actually say, well, thanks guys, but you weren't there for me 10 years ago. And I'm doing very well now. So, and I'm in control of what I'm putting out there, which is important. That matters 100%. Another moment was probably being one of Amazon's all-star authors, which means you're one of the most read authors, which has been tremendous. But on a very personal level, when writers, when readers write into me and email me and say things like, "You've got me back into reading again," you know, for various reasons, maybe they've just been busy with working, family, depression, any number of things, and they just got out of the joy of reading, and then suddenly they find a detective that they like, that and it doesn't really matter that it's a detective, it's the characters that they like, the character-driven plots, and it's just got them back into reading again, and it's given them a distraction. And the number of people, number of readers that have said that it's given them a distraction over lockdown is incredible. So I'm very, very proud of that, I've got to say, because goodness knows we all need a distraction at the moment.
I want to pick up on what Dougie said now about seeing someone reading his book. When you see people reading your book, do you ever go up to them and say, "Hi, I'm the author, do you want me to sign it?"
No. No, I wouldn't do that. That's a very quick answer.
My stuff is purely ebook at the moment. I don't have paperbacks at the moment, so unless I was to ask what they've got on their Kindle or their Kobo, I'm not likely to know what they're reading.
I actually, because I go to football every week, I tend to, and people know, I sit in the same seat every week. I did before all this nonsense started, and I drink in the same pub every time. Every time we have a club, you know, an opposing fans come, every so often I'll get someone hunt me down with like a pack of my books and ask me to sell all my book, sign all their books for them. And that's quite nice, but it does make you feel a bit stupid when you stood outside a football ground and everyone's walking past, you're signing all books and stuff like that. But I've never actually offered to sign someone's book. I think that would be a step too far, just in case they didn't like it and gave me a mouthful, or asked for their money back, which would be even worse.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had people approach me in many different situations to sign the books. I've not gone up to somebody and asked them. I think one of the weirdest locations was probably the changing room of the gym, which was slightly awkward. But we managed. This was pre-COVID, obviously, and you know, so I'm very happy to do that. I'm very proud to do it. I still don't take that for granted. It means a lot to me. So yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I said we're coming up towards the end of our panel. There's about 6 minutes left. So shall we go back around and have a quick recap of all your main characters and books?
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. I have 4 books at the present time of the Campbell series. Are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they have subtitles such as Smoke Shadows is the first one, and the second one is Water Wheel, spelt W-E-A-L, which gets quite a few comments, I have to say, of people who just think I don't know how to spell. And the third one, which is Twisting Tide, which is about the wash, and then Shifting Sands, which is about the Norfolk coast, essentially, all with murder mysteries. entwined among them. I also have the one written under Mary Bale, which is, can't remember this now, and obviously my bunny story, Hesty Bunny's New Home, which is a picture book. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have currently 6 titles and 1 anthology. So the Crime Syndicate is the anthology that covers the first 4 books. So you've got Violence in the Blood, which is the perma-free on Amazon and all the other sites. That's followed up with In for the Kill. Then that goes into a title called Walk Amongst the Dead. And book number 4 is called Call to Vengeance. So that's the Crime Syndicate that deals with Malky Thompson and his associates. And it starts off in 1976 and comes right up to date up to about 2018, I think. Currently have plans to write about another 4 in that series, but they're on hold at the moment. As I say, I've got a standalone out that's called Paid in Full, but is literally going to be rebranded and recovered next week as Defrayed. And I think I'm going with the strapline, a gritty, taut thriller with a killer twist. It's got some decent reviews already with the existing cover, but I'm hoping to reach a bigger audience with a bit more of a commercial cover on that. And then my last one is a bit of a kind of giveaway that I do. It's called Thriller Shots. It's 5 short stories. It's been reviewed in the Bristol Noir e-zine, and yeah, I've got some decent reviews on that as well. Kind of noir inspired type stories that, again, they're kind of set in the UK and America. But yeah, that's it currently.
Well, my trilogy is the first. They're all available in paperback and ebook. The Crew is the first one. That's currently a free download on Amazon and has been actually in or around #1 for 9 years now, since it was released as an ebook in 2011. And it's got something like 275-star reviews, so it's not done too bad. The second book in the series is called Top Dog. That's also available as an ebook. And the latest one, In the Know, which is this one, that one. Oops, there. That came out in May the 14th. Every review it's got so far is 5-star, which is really nice. And it's going great guns. And we filmed Top Dog, and we're in talks to film In the Know. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I'll just show you, as well as my Edinburgh series with Davy Johnson, my Manchester series, which features Kevin Coupland, Detective Sergeant Kevin Coupland. This Fragile Chord is the first in the series, and Sticks and Stones is the latest book that was published a couple of months back. They're all out in Kindle version, paperback, and audiobook. And the 7th book in the series, currently untitled at the moment, is due out, you've heard it here first, folks, in December.
Excellent. Well, it's been a genuine pleasure to interview all of you. And I think we should all say a big thanks to Lindsay before we go off stream for organising the festival. Absolutely. As well. She's done a really good job of it.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you. Been brilliant.
Thank you so much. I think we've got a minute, but what I'm going to do is thank you guys, and I'm just going to thank you for all your support, for all the authors that supported me, for all the publishers that have supported me, and for everybody that's watching on YouTube and Facebook at the moment. And I just want to give a wee shout out to Anna Smith, JT Kirk, Alan L. Mann, Claire McCleary, Douglas Skelton, James Andrew, Caroline Dunford, Alex Nye, Helen Fields, Doug Johnston, Caz Maston, Dr. Noir, aka Jackie Collins, Lynn Anderson, Wendy H. Jones, Jackie McLean, Chris Longmuir, Ian Skewis, Marion Todd, Tana Collins, Owen Mullen, Carol Ramsey, Michael Malone, Emma McKenzie, Michael McKenzie, Andrew James Gregg, Shan Bearden, Noel Holton, Gordon Kerr, and Val Penny, Ed James, Leslie Kelly, Peter Ritchie, Margaret Kirk, Helen Forbes, Alan Martin, Myra Duffy, Nick Quantrill, Paul Toulon, and yourselves, Emma Salisbury, Mark Newman, Pamela St. Abbs, and Dougie Brimson. Thank you so much for making this weekend come to life. If it hadn't been for you guys, this would never have happened. You made it as much as what I made it.
And thank you all those awesome readers out there that make it possible for us to do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Definitely, yeah. It just shows that, you know, in times like these, we can all come together and still put on a great show without actually physically being there. We can still entertain the masses. So thanks so much, guys. So that's the end of Reading Between the Crime Books online book festival for 2020. Hopefully there will be a repeat in 2021, and hopefully there'll be a little like nuggets coming in between now and then. So hopefully this will become something that we can all look forward to. I'd say there's always a place for online and physical book things, the way the technology is going.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And good night.